Tonight's candidates for Richmond Mayor: LeVar Stoney, Jack Berry, Joe Morrissey, Michelle Mosby, and John Belials.
This campaign's first attack ad is about your criminal conviction and legal troubles with an underage girl whom you married. In this ad, Michelle Mosby says you can't be trusted, and you've taken advantage of your biggest support base, the African American community. Please respond as it relates to your fitness for office.
With regard to Myrna, she is my wife. We have two beautiful, healthy children, and we're very, very happy. You know, I have spent 30 years defending folks, representing the underdog. Tonight, or this afternoon, while most of my candidates, colleagues were preparing for this debate, I spent 9 hours in the John Marshall Courts building defending a young man accused of assault on police officers, and he was acquitted at about 6:05.
I do not see any legislation that has passed by Mr. Morrissey that would help the African American community. We can say married or no married, this young lady was underaged, and to me, for anyone in the African American community, they would have went to jail had they done that to a young lady. And so for me, it's against the law.
You know, Mr. Morrissey's record speaks for itself. When he was Commonwealth's attorney, he was indicted 3 times on bribery. And now he's going to come into City Hall and clean up corruption and cronyism? I mean, it's like, you know, a recent conversion.
In your final year in the General Assembly, you had difficulties with both parties over your legal troubles and were unable to move legislation.
I introduced legislation that limited point source introduction of nitrogen into the James River. It took a lot of work across party lines. I got that done. I sponsored legislation to end payday lending. It was successful. Championed the rights of gay men and women to serve in the Virginia National Guard when it wasn't popular and no one else was doing it. I sponsored legislation banning smoking in restaurants. And I think I'm the only Democrat that worked with Ken Cuccinelli to get restorative justice bills passed, including, because you and I spoke about it in my office, a bill to change the writ of actual innocence.
He is talking about doing a lot of things for our schools, historic tax credit, derelict properties, all of these things, but I need you all to please go to his legislative record, because all of it, 2015, failed. 2014 failed. So the fact that he thinks he can become mayor and then go back across to the General Assembly and get things done, unacceptable.
In his last year in office, he was stripped of all of his committee assignments. Now, how can you represent constituents who are not on any committees?
In 2004, you lied to police, then later told the truth about a tire slashing incident. Can voters trust you to be trustworthy and honest when you're not under pressure?
When I was 23 years old, 22 years old, yes, I should have told the truth right away, and I did. When the authorities asked for more information, I cooperated. And a General Assembly of Republicans and Democrats unanimously approved my appointment to be the Secretary of the Commonwealth. However, there are people on this stage who, number one, don't listen to the citizens of this city when they were trusted to. There are people on the stage who have performed with professional misconduct while in office. Those are the individuals I would say that we can't trust to be the next mayor of this city.
Court documents reveal that in 2002 and then again in 2010, you filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Yes.
If you have a history of trouble keeping your own finances in order, why should voters trust you with the city budget?
Since bankruptcy, I have become the president of council and presided over that $700 million budget, and has been able to give every department that needed the resources necessary to move forward.
All right, next question for Joe Morrissey. What would you do to get taxpayers to trust the city's decisions and its leaders? How would you erase any image of corruption?
There is a feeling right now that our fiscal house is not in order, that we waste money. I'll give you an example. We spent $200,000 on the Trip on Back report to tell people what they already knew, that people wanted to keep the baseball stadium at the Diamond. We have a mayor who had an executive protection unit that took 2 detectives to Italy to protect him. And those are 2 less detectives in Richmond. We have wasted money not only on Redskin Stadium, but we spent $15 million on a bike race. You know where they paved roads? Downtown, parts of North Side. They didn't do it over in South Side. They didn't do it in many neighborhoods where they haven't had paved roads in years. That's the type of waste that I'm talking about. We spent $50,000 at Huguenot High School to hand out water when they had the rollout. We are wasting money, and that's not going to happen under my business approach running the City Hall.
You mentioned your situation at Venture Richmond, and you get some credit for attracting festivals and sports competitions and other things like that to the city of Richmond. But it would seem that we've been slow to bring Fortune 500 companies to town. How do we reverse that and bring more jobs and economic development here?
It's all about enhancing the vitality of the community and making it a place that young professionals want to be at. We need to make sure that we keep all the U of R graduates, all the VCU graduates, all the Virginia Union graduates here. Once we've gotten them here, we need to keep them here. And you do that by making this place incredibly vital. And that's the art scene, that's the food scene, it's the music scene, it's the festival scene, all things that I've been working on in my career over the last 18 years. It used to be that young professionals or workers followed the companies. Now it's the companies follow the workers. So as long as we have the best and brightest, highly creative people, we're going to create a creative economy here that attracts those companies.
John, did the Richmond Economic Development Authority give away the farm and the Stone Brewery deal and give that company an unfair advantage over its growing number of brewery competitors in the Richmond marketplace?
I think giving away the farm is too strong a term. I do believe that Stone is going to pay back the debt as scheduled, and there's a couple of safeguards that I don't have more than a minute to go into here that we put into place that will be helpful. But it's also important to remember what got us on the craft brew map in the first place, and that's the Hardywoods and the Triple Crossings and the little guys that put us on the map, and we have to be able to encourage them to grow. And this administration took Hardywood to task and tried to force them to pay back taxes, which originally 2 years prior they said, you don't have to pay. And all of a sudden they stuck them with a $55,000 bill. That's not good business. That's not good catering to local business. So while the beer hall part of the Stone Brewing project should be done privately, I believe the brewery part is a good deal for the city.
I think the city gave it away. We gave a independent private company $33 million, including $23 million in general revenue bonds, which are redeemable at taxpayers' expense. The retiring outgoing assessor said we gave away property on the river, which they could sell. Now, what did we get out of it? We have the obligation now to pay back $33 million. We didn't learn our lesson with the Redskins Stadium when we built the second richest team in the NFL, a $14 million stadium. We didn't learn our lesson with 6th Street Marketplace or Main Street Station. Municipalities should not be in the business of private sector endeavors.
Time. Thank you very much. You've been a strong advocate of the city's questionable financial arrangement with Stone Brewing. Can you tell us how many jobs at Stone are held by City of Richmond residents and how many of those are residents of the Fulton Hill neighborhood?
When we had the conversation with Stone, it was for them to reach that community. That's a community that does not have transportation. That's a community that we wanted to see be able to thrive.
Well, I think Richmond is famous and noted and should brag about the fact that we're loyal to local. We are a town that supports local businesses. We need to grow local businesses. We need to make it easier at City Hall to get permits and licenses and things like that. But we absolutely need to continue that characteristic about Richmond that makes us so unique. We don't like chains. They can stay in the suburbs. I think that we need to do whatever we can to encourage small businesses. Forget about the big, shiny projects. Let's focus on the little guys. Let's get those businesses up and running. They employ hundreds and thousands of people when you add them all up. And the story I love telling is when Ben & Jerry's came to Carytown, everybody went to Bev's, and Ben & Jerry's closed up and left town. And that's what we do in Richmond, and that's what we need to continue to do.
Young people, 16 to 24, are the most likely to be unemployed in Richmond. What would you do as mayor to ensure that young people are ready for the workforce and connected to employment opportunities?
Well, I think we got to do a better job in connecting our career technical education to some of our high schoolers.
Redskins Stadium, let's understand what we did. City Council loaned EDA $10 million, plus $4 more million from the state, and we built that stadium for $14 million. What did we get out of it? We got the right to pay them an additional $500,000 a year for the next 8 years. We didn't even get our local vendors the right to come in there and sell their products inside. It was a great deal for the Washington Redskins. And let's be clear, they needed to come to Richmond to expand their new TV market. They couldn't go north to Baltimore. They were prescribed from doing that. They couldn't go east into the ocean. They had to come into Central Virginia, so we built them a stadium. And let me tell you, we are already, as the Richmond Times-Dispatch reported, we are already 2 payments behind from the EDA. It's going to bite us.
How about retired city employees who have not received a COLA increase for years? What will you do for me?
I've heard from a number of people who have retired, but also a number of individuals who actually have worked in City Hall currently, who've worked 30-plus years in City Hall and have not received more than $30,000 a year.
A couple candidates, including yourself, Joe, have gone on record talking about there being 2 Richmonds. One that's visible and thriving, and the other that's hidden and neglected. The mayor is supposed to work in the interest of everyone. What would you do to improve the conditions for people in poverty?
3 things right off the bat. Number 1, we have over 816 blighted homes in the city of Richmond. Other municipalities have eradicated those blighted homes by offering incentives for developers, selling those homes for $1, giving them free water hookup, and then incentivizing them by posting a bond and raising the house, putting new construction up there, and then keeping that house in the affordable housing inventory for 5 years. I've been a member of a board, Neighborhood Housing Services of Richmond, and I started a program that did just that. I put my own money into 5 homes, we renovated them, and took folk out of projects. I would do that on a mass scale. I would end the projects in the city of Richmond. It was a vestige from Jim Crow in the 50s, and it's disgraceful. I would use CIP funds to coordinate our efforts for infrastructure. I would expand the Virginia Independence Program in a way that has never been done before.
Workforce, blighted properties. We put staff in place so that we can begin to raise the number of pulling back blighted properties up for our city so that we can begin to put them in the hands of nonprofits. From there have been different homeless programs that have been done in other cities where the city has recouped those properties and helped put those persons that are homeless in these properties. We have to look to see how perhaps we can put some workforce to the homeless population as well so that they can become self-sufficient.
Number 1, we have the Virginia Independence Program. It was developed by the state legislature in 1998. It moves people from welfare to the workforce. We haven't utilized that in the city of Richmond. Additionally, when we talk about expanded these blighted homes, let's be mindful what we could do. We have homes that have been blighted for 20 and 30 years, trees growing through the middle of them. We had passed legislation in the General Assembly for receivership, and Richmond didn't take advantage of it. I will.
And we've also failed to properly budget for core services like leaf collection, snow removal, and grass cutting. How did this happen, and how do we fix it?
The budget had been prioritized in that way for numerous years, and so going forward, hiring the right people.
John, I'd like you to talk about infrastructure.
But I have seen some of the pipes burst in the winter, but that's one of the things that Public Utilities is, in my mind, one of the departments that is on top of the game and ahead of the game. They definitely react as the weather freezes pipes and bursts them. So they're doing everything that they can as far as preventing it. Some of these pipes are 140 years old or older, and we just have to be able to fix the ones that burst, but also make sure that the ones that we can clean out are cleaned out and prevent them from bursting. And I think DPU does a pretty good job of that. Richmond does not have a money problem in the sense that Petersburg has a money problem. We have a spending priority problem. And we have a Department of Public Works that is absolutely not run by somebody that's qualified to run it. And you start with the directorship and you start with funding. We don't have the crews. We don't have the equipment. If you talk to any of those guys, and I've ridden with those alley crews before, working on the alleys and going out there every day with them, and they tell you straight up, they tell you what's real. They don't sugarcoat it. They lack the equipment, they lack the pay, they lack the direction from the supervisory level and up. The list of alleys in my district alone is about 250 deep, and you multiply that by 9 districts, and we're way behind. We need to put more money into it, and we did a couple of years ago, and it helped.
How would you address the shortcomings that there is no connectivity in some areas linking people who need jobs to businesses that are hiring?
Well, the transit network plan is a great start. It'll be released in January, and that is going to reform how we look at transit in the city, provide more reliable service, more connectivity, but we also need to start working with Henrico County. I believe that the RVA Rapid Transit Plan is a great plan for the long term, but we need to start with, what I call hitting singles. Let's extend the first line out West Broad Street to Short Pump, where thousands of jobs are available, and there are plenty of people in Richmond that will ride the bus to go to those jobs. And we start there, and then we look at Route 1 Quarter and then Route 360. I understand how challenging it is to get around the city on public transit. I rode the bus every day for 3 years to City Hall. I'm the only candidate that's probably done that. Actually, I know I am. And it is a challenge.
For Jack Berry, I'm not sure you're aware, but in the last hour, a non-binding agreement has been signed by the City of Richmond, VCU, and the Richmond Flying Squirrels to build a $50 million stadium, a partnership on the boulevard. You had been a proponent of a Shockoe Bottom baseball stadium at one time. What are your thoughts on today's announcement of this new stadium?
I'd say hallelujah. It's fantastic news. When I was at Venture Richmond, I did everything I could to strengthen downtown. Yes, I tried to get Nutsy to come downtown, but that was then, this is now. It's really exciting to hear that there's a new opportunity on the boulevard. I think this is a tremendous opportunity for Richmond to create a midtown right on the boulevard that would include retail, restaurants, sports, entertainment, hotel. This could be our midtown, really our second downtown, and it could help to really connect the fan area with Northside. So this is a really great development. I just heard about it a little while ago. It sounds like it's going to be financed privately with VCU and the Squirrels primarily. Hopefully it'll involve all 4 jurisdictions, because I don't think the city should go it alone. We've got to maintain our debt capacity for schools, but I think it's a great piece of news. I can't wait to get involved in implementing it as mayor.
Mr. Berry says he listens to the citizens of the city. However, when he was working at Venture Richmond and was being the captain of the cheerleading team for the Shockoe Bottom baseball stadium, when the mayor even stopped actually cheerleading for the project, he continued to do so even after that. He even volunteered to write emails on behalf of black ministers in the city. Now, when people have already decided that they want the stadium somewhere else, he continued. That's not listening to me.
I did not work on the ballpark project after the mayor had withdrawn it.
I'd like to point out, after the mayor withdrew the plan in May of 2014, the next month, Mr. Berry gave a speech to the Retail Merchants Association saying he believed completely in the plan. That was in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. In July, the Chamber in Venture Richmond took out a full-page ad in the Times-Dispatch supporting the plan. So to say that it was dead when the mayor withdrew it is false. And the good news about the announcement tonight is that the people were right all along. Keep it on the boulevard. If we had listened to them before, we would have not wasted 7 months, $1 million, and thousands of hours of staff time.
A CNU survey says the vast majority of people believe schools are underfunded. They need more money. A smaller percentage believe schools are not making the most of the money they're getting. Which do you believe, and how would you fix it?
The former. Right now, the schools absolutely need an infusion of $300 million for brick and mortar. We have 43 schools, only 13 are fully accredited. More schools have mold and mildew than don't. Some schools have leaky roofs, falling ceiling tiles, antiquated HVAC systems. It's a disgrace. The average age of the school is 65 years. Here's a game changer in the industry. We could put $300 million, just as Jack spoke about revitalizing downtown. You know how we've done that in Scott's Addition? With tax credits, historic tax credits, both state and federal. We need to do that with the schools. My law partner, Paul Goldman, has been a leader on that, me to a lesser degree. If we do that, if we tweak federal legislation, we will have investors investing in these schools, and the tenant will be RPS.
Jack Berry, every budget cycle there's a bitter fight over how much money the mayor, the city can afford to give schools. Teachers, parents, students all disappointed, some crying, many protesting, begging for additional funding. What's your plan to stop the acrimony and give Richmond students the best possible education experience?
There's absolutely too much fighting and too much drama that goes on each budget cycle. We shouldn't have to see parents come down to save our schools, and I'm glad they did because it was a desperate situation. But we should be having leaders that can solve these problems.
One of the things that I've been working on council is to implement legislation that would create a funding stream for the school system and hopefully pass it before the end of the year. So whoever up here gets elected mayor, whether I'm successful or not, we make sure that the school system has for 5 years funding that we know is going to be level, and we know that they can then turn the focus to accountability, and we avoid the budget squabbles that we've seen the last 3 years. That cannot continue.
Do you think the city should increase its debt limit to borrow more money? If yes, which taxes would you support raising? If no, how would you meet the critical needs of Richmond Public Schools?
Well, I do not think that at this time we should raise the debt limit. I have a plan that for 5 to 10 years to build facilities. Schools and public safety get the large amount of our budget.
I'd rather be investing in children than investing in HVAC units. And how can we go about telling the children in our city they actually matter when there are bricks and towels falling on their heads?
Richmond Public Schools have lagged behind the rest of the state in SOL scores. How would you address this?
I think that we've made things a lot harder than they had to be. When I became president of council, it was as simple as having a conversation with our chair, getting the chair together, getting council school board, and then having a conversation with a mayor that some say is unbearable, but I got him in the room to have the conversation. I bring people together. And so with that, this is what we have to do. Our children have to be educated, so we have to have a plan for that. Schools, give us the plan for education. Give us the names of the schools that you want to have built so that we can, as a council and as your mayor, bring the resources necessary to move us forward. I do not find it to be as complicated as we've made it to be. I think we need a proven leader, and that's what I've shown to be, that can pull us where we need to be with our educational system.
I will be a full-time mayor 24/7.
Next.
I'll be a full-time mayor.
Yes, I'll give up my law practice.
Yes, I'll be a full-time mayor.
Absolutely.
Name one opponent you would offer a job to in your administration.
John Beliles would be a good person to be part of the administration.
Michelle Mosby. She's been a good president of City Council.
John, you're 2 for 2 so far. John was one of only 2 members of City Council that put the brakes on the. John Beliles.
Okay.
ED, excuse me.
Michelle.
John Beliles.
Michelle Mosby.
Thank you.
How long have you lived in the city of Richmond, LeVar?
12 and a half years.
38 years.
32.
I don't know, on and off.
46 years on November 2nd.
Bus rapid transit, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but with connector routes in South Richmond and
5
on the
words.
side.
Michelle Mosby.
Yes.
Get on board.
What's your plan to get Richmond doing more business with minority contractors?
Would you hire a qualified administrator to run the city when you become mayor, yes or no?
That's a no-brainer, yes.
We already have one, Selena Cuffey-Glenn.
Yes.
Yes.
We've got one.
Do you have an interest in removing monuments from Monument Avenue, yes or no?
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Would you keep Dr. Dana Bedden as school superintendent?
That's a decision for the school board.
No, LeVar's correct. That's a decision for the school board.
We are prohibited from the charter from doing that.
Okay.
Decision of the school board.
I would lobby the school board to keep him.
Should Richmond have a one-stop shop for all permitting, yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Would you support a
Yes.
Go ahead.
Come on, Diane.
My apologies.
Yes, it was tried in 2008 and shot down.
My apologies.
That's all right.
You hesitated.
That's all right.
What is the bigger threat facing the city, poor schools or crime?
Poor schools.
Poor schools.
Poor schools.
Crime, because schools can be fixed.
Poor schools.
Would you raise taxes?
No.
No, not necessary.
No, sir.
No.
No chance.
And I want to make sure that the folks who are getting in contract with City Hall represent and reflect the diversity of our city. And so that will be a focus of mine. But also, for individuals who are getting contracts with our city, who are doing business with City Hall, I also encourage them also to hire former offenders as well. People who have actually, who've paid the price. Ban the box is just not enough. People have to actually have jobs in the city. And so for 26% of the poverty rate currently in the city, those individuals who have made a mistake in life also deserve a shot at some of those jobs.
On minority business, I think it's just really critical that we make that a priority in city government. When I was at Venture Richmond, I championed supplier diversity initiatives where we went out to major corporations and encouraged them to make partnerships with minority businesses, and I authored 2 best practices booklets. I served on the board of the Metropolitan Business League as well.
Several of your opponents highlighted your support for the Shockoe Ballpark proposal. Now that it appears the squirrels may be staying on the boulevard, how should Shockoe be developed going forward?
Yes, I think we all learned a lot during that whole process. We learned a lot about our history. We learned a lot about Shockoe. We learned a lot about even archaeology in Shockoe. So I think that the next step for Shockoe is to focus on our slave heritage, history, and create a heritage site in Shockoe. And then I think we need to have a memorial park in Shockoe Bottom. The floodplain cannot be used for anything else. It can't be used for apartments, for example. So it's an ideal location for a park that memorializes the suffering of slavery and tells the entire history to the world.
Richmond is also stressed by 50 murders. And residents in parts of the city where this gun violence and other violent crimes are happening want it stopped.
Unanimously in support of our police department and our police chief, and we have an incredible police department. We do have to keep this in perspective. We are at a 45-year low in violent crime in our city. So our police department deserves a lot of credit for the job that they've done. Yes, homicides are up this year. We've hit 50, and I think the number last year was 41. I met with the police chief last week. We talked about this. It's mostly arguments, drugs, domestic. They are doing, I think, an exceptional job. But one thing we've got to do is support them and fill the vacancies. There are lots of vacancies in the police department that aren't getting filled.
Richmond should become a part of Henrico to allow the city to thrive. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
I absolutely disagree. The last time we tried annexation, it was done pursuant to the United States Supreme Court's ruling in 1975, Richmond versus United States. And what happened? We annexed 44,000 white residents in Chesterfield County for the sole purpose, according to Justice Thurgood Marshall, to dilute black voter strength in Richmond. It was appalling then. It's wrong now. Absolutely, I would not support that proposal.
Richmond is much stronger than it's been in a long time. We're on equal footing with the counties. We don't have to have our hand out anymore. We're doing pretty darn well. We've got more population growth. We've got investment. We've got a really strong outlook. People want what we've got. We're in a strong hand. We're equal partners with the counties now, and annexation is not as critical as it once was.
I had 2 other companies that were million-dollar companies, one that provided residential services for intellectually challenged adults, another company that provided day support for that difficult group, that challenged group. We had 27 employees. I signed the fronts of checks for a long time.
Because Richmond deserves a leader who will work to bring equality to all Richmonders, who will work to make a significant decrease in poverty, and who will put her plan for schools in action and has proven she will lead from the front no matter how hard the task.
Many like to question my experience. Tonight, I question their records. We do not need a mayor who will isolate this city or who will keep us on the front pages for anything uncomplimentary because of professional misconduct.
Richmond's come a long way. We're doing so well on so many levels. We're making the list of some of the great cities in America. Incredible food scene, art scene, population is growing. Things are really improving. I've had something to do with that in my career at Venture Richmond over the last 18 years and in my career in city government before that. But we've got a city government that's not doing its part, that's not keeping up, that's dysfunctional on so many levels. They can't even issue an audited financial statement for the year that ended June 30, 2015. We've got a lot of problems. We need somebody with experience, somebody that's done this before. I've been the budget director, the deputy city manager, been the Hanover County administrator. I've run Venture Richmond, been highly successful with the Folk Festival, the RVA branding campaign. We need somebody especially that's going to unite the community, that's going to bring all of us together, that's going to bring all the resources of the community together to tackle the problems. This is no time for on-the-job training. This is no time for a politician or a political operative. I've got more experience than any of the others. I can fix it. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I love this city. Please vote for me. Thank you.
All right. And the final closing statement, John, go ahead.
Thank you all for being here. Being mayor of this city is serious work, and it requires a strong mayor to get it done. I know this city like the back of my hand, and I love it with all of my heart. That's why at the RTD Forum, Mr. Barry, Morrissey, and Ms. Mosby selected me as somebody that they would want in their administration. Tonight, thank you, LeVar, for jumping on board. I feel like Trident gum. All the dentists recommend me. I'm the only candidate who's worked in the mayor's office, has experience at the staff level, and on city council. The question you have to ask is, do you want a mayor who everyone wants to work with, or do you want a mayor who no one wants to work with? I'm an effective leader because I listen. I know that other people are smarter than me, and they have good ideas that they bring to the table. I bring an outsider's spirit, but I have the insider's knowledge over the last decade. I listen to everyone, I can work with anyone, and I'm beholden to no one but you, the people of Richmond. And I hope you'll support me on November 8th. Thank you.
Right, John, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have for tonight's